Check 1, 2, 2, 2. Well, good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Brandon Robbins, and I'm the pastor here at Lynn Haven United Methodist Church. And what a pleasure it is to have you guys come and to join us tonight as we have this Protect Young Eyes training event, an opportunity where we all realize, even though we think we're young, we know nothing about technology, and we're going to learn that tonight. I'm really excited that you're here. Hopefully when you came in, you picked up this little packet. If you don't have this packet, they should have some in the back. But these are some notes for tonight. The one thing I really want to draw your attention to on the front is there's this little piece of paper up at the top, and it says, I'd like to receive the link for tonight's presentation. And so this will all be recorded, and we've got a special link that you'll be able to go to if you ever want to watch it again and kind of go through any of the stuff. And so if you want to receive that, just write your name and your email address on it, and then there's a box in the back as you head out. It says offerings. You don't have to throw money in there. I mean, you can throw money in there if you want to, but I don't know where it's going to go in the end. But if you just want to put that card in there, you can put that in there, and you'll be able to, we'll send you a link so you can go back and watch this. Tonight, I'm going to invite Doug to come up. Doug is going to be our presenter for tonight. He hails originally from Michigan, so he's like laughing at all of us as we freeze outside today. But he now lives in Miami or down in southern Florida, and we're just really excited that you're here. So thank you for being here.
Glad to serve. I got Mike on me already. You're good. Thanks, sir. Good evening. My name is Doug Crawford, and it's a joy to be able to be with you. I do find pleasure in cold weather. In fact, I served as a pastor for 15 years in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I'm from, and before that went to Bible college in northern Wisconsin, where only one day did we ever cancel classes because of cold weather, and the wind chill was 60 below zero. So that was frostbite in less than 5 minutes in the exposed skin, and that's cold. It's invigorating cold. Like, have you ever done ice baths like that? Whoa! That's what it is. Just you take a breath in and everything freezes from your head to your toes, and it's awesome. I do now live in Venice, Florida, and my wife and I, we moved there 4 years ago with some of our children. I'll explain how all of that goes. We have a unique family dynamic. But I find that many times as organizations, we come into places like this and we want to serve, and I pray that tonight is a blessing to you. I pray that tonight is an opportunity that you will leave informed, encouraged, empowered, enabled, and maybe a little hurt, and I'm okay with that. We admit that we aren't quite doing what we could, and so there's going to be some hard things that we're going to talk about, but it has no intention of harming you. It has intention to kind of let's look and see what we're doing. How can we do better for the glory of God and for the flourishing of our children? And so maybe you sit in a pew this evening feeling as though you are convincing yourself as digital aliens raising children who seem to innately know how to operate everything, and the world feels as though it's burning down around you, and you're just convincing yourself, I'm going to be okay. It's just fine. And I'm with you in that. At Protect Young Eyes, we realize that parents are often afraid of what their kids might experience online. And so what we want to do is, through our research, our education, our advocacy, give families practical solutions so that they're prepared, balanced, and protected online. In fact, right now, our founder and CEO, Chris McKenna, is at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, which seems to be an odd place for this, what we do, but it's a way to be able to meet with those who are having impact. We'll talk a little about advocacy in a little bit, but this is something that we take very passionately. And not only do we want to change things on a broad scale, but we also want to help the neighbors amongst us. And so then I and a team of 7 of us travel all over the country, serving schools, public and private, churches, other community groups, and how to navigate social media and technology safely. And this is for me why I do this. This is my family. They're in quadrants for a couple of reasons. One, we only have one photo where everybody is in it, and it was an outdoor wedding in Indiana in October, and it was rainy and cold and gray, and nobody looked really excited to be posing for that, and so we got to do the quadrant method. So in the top left corner is my wife and I. Our high school sweethearts. Her name is Rose. She couldn't date until she was 16. I took her out for her 16th birthday, and 4 years later we were married. And so in May we just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. And the little guy sitting on my wife's lap is Silas. He's actually on his first business trip with Dad right now. He's in the kids zone right now. And we got to be in the airports and eat all the junk food that the guys do, and we don't have Mom telling us what we can and cannot eat. And then sitting next to my wife, Rose, is my 8-year-old son, JD, Joshua Douglas. And JD is the rule follower of our younger two, and Silas is the reason we have the rules. And that's all right. There's things about JD that I wish that he would kind of buck against some things, because for him, if an authority says to do it, you do it. But sometimes the authority is wrong. Silas has no problem saying no to any authority. And my prayer is that I don't have to visit him in prison someday because of the way that he kind of likes to buck against and live life on his own terms. And he loves Jesus, and even just was asking me, Dad, when do I get baptized someday? And so we have meaningful conversations, but man, that kid, there's strengths and weaknesses applied to a variety of things based on personality. The top or the bottom left corner is my son Ryan, and that wedding that I was at in October in northern Indiana was the young lady that he's leaning against to. This is an engagement photo, but they are now husband and wife, and they got married just in October, and they're awesome. They're awesome. Ryan works in the RV industry because he's in Elkhart, which every RV, if you've ever been in one, has probably some part or assembly done in Elkhart, Indiana. And so he works at a company that feeds into that industry. And then his wife grew up on a bison ranch. They have, I don't know how many head of cattle in northern Indiana, but then they have a couple thousand acres in North Dakota with a whole bunch of other animals roaming out there. And God has brought them together, and they are serving their local church and loving each other beautifully. The top right corner is my daughter, Cheyenne. Cheyenne and my son, Ryan, are biologically cousins, but were raised in the same household. And in July of 2010, sadly, Ryan's mother passed away, and these children needed a home. And I just finished the first year being Cheyenne's youth pastor. They were in our church. I served as youth pastor for 12 of the 15 years that I was there, and I was in the hospital as soon as I heard that Mom had died, and they were saying, we don't know what's going to happen because they're biologically cousins, and they're possibly going to be split up and follow biology. And I said, that can't happen, because that meant Cheyenne was going to move to Indiana, Ryan's going to move to a military base in Hawaii, where his dad was stationed, and a dad who left when he was 4. And he really didn't know him well. And it's like, God, that's not good. And we had always prayed that the Lord would allow us to adopt older sibling groups. In fact, that's the reason why JD and Silas are younger than the amount of time that Cheyenne and Ryan have been in our home, because we tried to naturally, but tried to not have children biologically so that we could have a home available at the drop of a hat for some older kids. And God, in July of 2010, chose to answer that prayer. The young man that Cheyenne is with is her husband, which is, I'm sure, a breath of fresh air to all of you. That she would take a photo that close with somebody that she's not married to would be odd. So that is her husband, Marquel, and he's an identical twin, and his brother's name is Marquez, and they joined our church when they were 16 based upon the doctrinal statements of our church. Which I don't know if you remember your high school years, but I, even as a pastor's kid, was not reading doctrinal statements of churches, nor did I even know that those things even existed. And so he came and was involved in our church and fell in love with my daughter. My daughter fell in love with him, and they have 2 children. The little guy in the bow tie is Q. He's named after his dad, and he's Baby Q is what we call him. I call him Baby Q because I love barbecue, and I love him. And so the bow tie outfit was his ring bearer outfit for Ryan and Lucy's wedding, and then the little guy in the bottom right corner is their youngest, just born on Friday, October 13th, just this last 3-4 months ago. And so I have 2 grandsons, 6 children if you count all of them, a wife, and we left our dog up north when we moved down south. And so I come to you saying, I'm in it with you. It's a long introduction, but I think that it's important for you to remember that I'm a human. I certainly know a few things, but I'm also a husband and father that fails. I'm a grandfather that wants to create a heritage of faith that can be passed on to the next generation. But I'm with you in this saying, what do we do? And so, what we have found, to take a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that the test of the morality of society is what it does for its children. And I'm grieved when I look at our current society and the trajectory of how it is treating the most vulnerable, Children, yes. Elderly, yes. The handicapped, yes. Whatever vulnerability that they have, I feel as though that we kind of like the survival of the fittest, and we neglect those that Christ has called us to serve. And so to have this opportunity to come alongside in very tangible ways, meeting with you, speaking in schools to K through 12 kids. I love every age group we get to talk to. And you get the kindergartners that you ask a question, and you can tell they have been waiting to tell somebody this since 3 days ago, and no one would listen. And so it has nothing to do with my question, but they want me to know about the rabbit that they got. And it's like, it's the best, all the way to the middle school and high school talks where we're trying to reaffirm that their identity and value is rooted in God. Not in how many likes and comments and followers they have on social media, not how much they make, not anything else, know what zip code they live in. But they're created in the image of God, and they're one for whom Christ died. And their identity and value, because it's attached to an immutable, unchanging God, cannot be higher, cannot be lower, cannot be different. That is so countercultural, but something that I think we desperately want to hear and to know, because in our heart of hearts, we believe it, but we just don't ever hear people affirm it. And so we want to come alongside, and in fact, a foundational scripture for us is Deuteronomy chapter 6, where we see that this instruction to celebrate that the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and we are to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then after we get to this, the instruction from God to Moses that we would teach these things to our children. And not just when we're at church, but when we're sitting down, when we're standing up, when we're walking along the path, and let it be like frontlets between the eyes and along the doorposts of your house and on your gates, that the Word of God would influence all of your life. And as a dad who has boys who play sports, and I enjoy playing sports, if I am not careful, then I can spend more time instructing them on how to throw a strong pitch, or how to hit a baseball, or how to put a ball in a hoop, or how to kick something, which is probably never going to earn them a paycheck, and neglect some of those chief responsibilities that I have to make sure that they are raised up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And so we, yes, want to cause our hearts to reflect what God has done in us, and to show that through us to our kids, and guide them, pray, beg for the heart of our children. But you can get that message any Sunday when you come into the walls of this church. But I want you to know that Protect Young Eyes, that is the foundation from which we see the world, including how we navigate digitally. So we don't want to forget the practical. And the word expert has kind of been spread really thin lately. And I hate even using it, because I don't feel as though that I'm an expert in this. But I'm on the one with the microphone and the one that got on an airplane to go here. So that's the title I get tonight. But just see me as Doug, as a parent who is with you in this walk together. If you want to know about the trends and those kinds of things that are going on in the digital world, we have just about once or twice a month a newsletter we put out called The Download. And on your note-taking guide, you'll see there that there's a number of QR codes. And if you don't know what a QR code is, I am so glad that you're at this presentation this evening. If you take the camera app on your phone and you put it on this, and you put this on the screen of your camera, it recognizes all of those dots to mean something, all right? And what it's going to do is it's going to be a hyperlink, a link that's going to bring you to a variety of different things. And this one specifically is going to, when you go on this, it's going to bring you to a page where it's going to ask for your name and your email address to register for our newsletter. And this is just something that's free that we put out on a regular basis. We have people on staff that are regularly researching the digital trends around the world. We pay attention to apps in the App Store and Google Play Store, and when they are number 72nd last week and they're number 17 this week, why did they jump so much? What's going on with all the downloads? What is it intended to be for? Are kids using it? Are kids using it the way it's intended to, or have they found a loophole within that platform to circumvent some of the things that their parents would otherwise catch? And so we want to come alongside and we let you know those things. When Apple updates things, when Android updates things, when we're involved in legislative works and things we want to rally you around, this is a way for you to keep up with what is going on. And so, again, this is the download. So this is not just a 90-minute lecture from me. There's going to be some classroom participation. So I hope that you're ready to answer some questions. Even if it's just a raising of a hand and you don't quite want to say anything out loud, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I'm curious for the noble, the brave, the ones that came in thinking they're just going to listen. What do you sense is the right age for your child to have a smartphone? And this could be very divisive at times. We're in the body of Christ, and thankfully the church has never had an argument since its beginnings, ever. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so she's not giving a number. She said, at whatever stage you're ready for your child to have access to pornography. All right? So the point that's being made is if you're not ready for that, then they aren't ready to have that, because you need to have those conversations along with giving them that. And we'll actually ask that question in a little bit about porn. And for those of you that think the word pornography is really awkward to say, I almost like to get crowds just to say on the count of 3 to say the word pornography together. Because if you can't say it in front of a group of trusted adults, there's no way you're going to have these conversations with your kids, right? And so to take kind of the awkwardness out of the word, I remember when I spoke at the church I grew up in as a speaker for Protect Young Eyes. My dad was the pastor. My brother is now a pastor on staff there. And I said the word penis from stage. I could not believe that I was saying that in the church I grew up in. But it was part of what we're talking about, and I'm actually going to use the word again later. So if that's awkward to you, then I'm sorry, but this is a conversation with adults, and we need to have these kinds of talks. All right? So other answers to this question. The child is smartphone. Yes, ma'am. High school. Okay. Others. Yes, sir. Okay, at whatever age they're able to legally obtain one on their own. So meaning that they got to get a job and earn it to pay for it? Okay, can't sign a contract till you're 18. All right, very good. Until you are able to legally sign for your own name. All right, others. And I'm okay with the diversity of this. This is good because this forces us to think. Yeah. When they start to drive. All right. Do they need a smartphone or are you just saying a cell phone? Just curious. Okay. What about social media? Amen. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. But because that's going to be part of their life, how do we bring them up in this?
I think it's got to happen before the smartphone.
Okay.
Because if you're not doing it before then they're going to be doing it on their own.
Okay.
Probably works.
Okay. All right. Left to their own devices. I mean, we as kids, when we were kids, we did the right thing. But our kids, for some reason, the holiness skipped a generation or something. I'm not quite certain how all that works. But, okay, any other answers? So, the right age for your child to have social media? Middle school? Okay. Is there a particular age or grade in middle school or generally middle school? Whoever it was that said middle school, I just heard this from over here. Yeah. Okay.
When they're still somewhat vulnerable.
Sure.
In high school, they tend to not listen. So I'd say kind of before all the hormones start to rage,
Yeah.
to have to sit down with them and show them and set protections up and be able to put locks on things before.
Beautiful. Excellent. I love that. Thank you. Again, it's a well thought through, reasonable answer. Yes.
I say college because I didn't have it till I was in college.
I know the hard thing is, what if you're on a volleyball team and everybody communicates on the team through Snapchat?
Is that a thing?
Oh, that absolutely is a thing. Yeah.
Well, shoot, so around it.
No, but I'm not, but that's not to say. I mean, there are schools that are private schools around the country that have said if you're going to, again, it's the private school, so they get to say these things. You have to sign a document saying that your child is not going to have social media before they graduate to attend this school. And that started with a group of moms that had 8th grade kids saying, you know what, we don't think that they are ready for this. And so they didn't. They all, as a pact, the entire grade agreed to it. This is at a small little Catholic school. They all agreed to this. The next year, they kept it going. And the teachers, the freshman teachers, like, what's up with this group? Like, this is, like, they behave better in class and blah, all these other things. And so they kept it going, and that grade graduates this year, and as each grade has gotten through, they've said, okay, once they graduate, we're making this a school-wide policy. Again, not all schools need to do that, but all schools ought to take seriously how they're going to engage and what can they do in the 8 hours of the day, 9 hours of the day that they have the kids with them, and then instruct and encourage and inform parents on how to kind of what the research shows and the data shows for the rest of the time that they're not in the school. I'm going to reframe the question just a little bit because I think some of you are getting to this point. What digital decisions give my child the best chance of having the most fulfilling childhood? Instead of asking a question, I know it's unfair because I asked the question that way, but instead of asking the question of about a specific age or a stage of life that we're going to say is a level playing field amongst all children, the rules are different for JD than they are for Silas. And that's just how that is. Silas believes it's unfair, and I agree, but that's not my goal. My goal is to be an expert of my child and to raise them up individually in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And that's hard. I hate being the bad guy, but I'm stubborn enough to be him. But it's one of those things like, you know what? Because I have strong convictions, and whatever the case is, and that doesn't mean that I'm always right, because I am a knothead. There are things that I'm going to make certain that I'm not going to budge on, and other things I need to, in all areas of life, there's things that we hold open-handed. It's like, Lord, give and take away, bless His name in all things. Whatever you get, I'm just going to hold it loosely. And there's other things that the Word of God says that we hold on tightly, we never let go, we give our lives for. And we have to figure out what those things are going to be, each household. So as we look at this, to kind of give you a little bit of a tip into what we're going to talk about, and the goal is not to get you to be convinced that our statement in our age is right. My goal is to challenge you to think about it. Have a conversation. If you and your spouse are living together, or at least even if you're divorced, if you can have these kinds of conversations. I know that's one of the difficult things is when they go to their dad's house, when they go to their mom's house, it's just different. In fact, we had a divorced woman write an article for us on our blog, on our website, talking about how to parent, co-parenting in the digital age. Because neither Chris nor I have walked through those waters of divorce individually. Now, as a pastor, I walked through those waters with a lot of people, but never had to, in my own daily life, had to walk through those waters. And so we're like, we don't feel qualified to write this article. So we found one of our followers who is a divorced woman who we believed was doing things really well and said, would you please write this for us so they can serve our audience well? But we believe that kids should wait until high school to get a smartphone. Now, I'm going to talk about, again, that's why I pushed back a little bit saying smartphone or cell phone earlier, because I'm not saying that you should never have access to them, ever. It is interesting that some of the studies are showing that, again, some of our greatest fears are kids, we're not going to be able to get a hold of them if there is the worst case scenario, an active shooter in their school. What the studies have shown, though, is a child with a device with a parent who's trying to engage with them while there's an active shooter actually puts themselves at greater danger because they're no longer able to listen to the direct instruction from the person who is in the classroom giving their lives for your child. And your texts and your phone calls may distract them from them actually hearing the instruction and going and doing what they ought to do. Now, I'm not going to ever step in the way of a mama bear who wants access to her kid. But we just need to wrestle and think on some of these things. We believe that kids' brains aren't ready for social media before age 16. In fact, the neurological development of the brain doesn't finish until your mid-20s. And we'll talk about this briefly. We actually had an entire 90-minute presentation on mental health technology and kids. And so you're going to get one slide and a couple of anecdotal comments out of that talk this evening. And sadly, this is where things are. This is a survey that was just done last month. 30,000 respondents asking this question. On the left, it says, how old were you when you got your first smartphone? On the right, how old were you when you got your first social media account? 11 years old on the left, 12 years old on the right. And the crazy thing about this is most of the major social media platforms, whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, the like, you have to be 13 to get these accounts. At least that's what you have to say on account creation. And so when we talk to middle schoolers, I especially kind of look at the young ladies in the room and said, ladies, I just want you to know, you may be 12 pretending to be a 15-year-old girl on Instagram. But the same thing that allows these 12-year-old girls to pretend to be 15 on Instagram allows me as a 42-year-old man to pretend to be a 15-year-old girl on Instagram. There's no age verification or identity verification process. In fact, that's one of the things that we're working on with legislators, is trying to pass laws that demand that, require that. That parental control settings and app settings are based upon the age of the Apple ID or the Gmail account, so that you can't even download Instagram unless your Gmail account. Now, does that mean that how much does it cost for Gmail? Nothing. So a kid could go and make another one. Certainly. There's always going to be loopholes. But to create and say, this needs to be something that we take seriously. And so with the average age, 13 years old is number 4 on the list, but the actual first age that you are able to have some of these social media platforms. All right? So only if we do the math really quickly, so we have 7, 11, so we have 18% of those get their first social media account at or beyond the age that they are legally allowed to. Put it another way, no middle school child is a better version of themselves in any metric because of the presence of social media in their lives. Now, are there some that use social media for, they get inspirational quotes and Bible verses and those kinds of things, and they can reach out? Absolutely. I'm not going to say that social media is always wrong. We're not an anti-tech company. We're a pro-tech company. Our approach is just more slow tech. Just because you upgrade your phone doesn't mean that you give your old one to your kid and don't even think twice about it. That's what we're wanting to get at. And so, as we go through this, whether you said no, slow, or go, whatever your stance is on engagement with social media and technology, the right mix of relational and technical tools are needed. So we've noticed something, that families that do certain things persistently and consistently tend to have children who learn to use technology in good, honoring ways. And so this is where in your note-taking guide, you're going to see you're going to see 5 values that we're going to spend our time looking at, and they're seen here on this title slide. 1, model the right behaviors. 2, pursue authentic connection. 3, delay all addictive tech. 4, diligently prevent harm. 5, advocate for change. These are values that I think most parents share, especially the parents that are involved in the organizations and schools and churches that invite Protect Young Eyes out to serve. And so we've found that the foundation of all of this is rooted in how we are engaging with technology. Because our kids many times are mirrors of our own actions. That's one of the beautiful things about being a youth pastor for 12 years at the same church. You get to know the parents really, really well. And as the younger siblings come through, you're like, I've seen that face on your mom 1,000 times. Or your dad says that exact same phrase after I say this line every time, and we both still think it's hilarious, right? But whatever the case is, this isn't anything that they sat down and said, okay, Silas, Crawford's always say this when someone else says this. I've never instructed him in that way. But guess what? There are things that he says that he's just learned because he's observed my life. And so we want to model these right behaviors. And this is where we start off looking in the mirror. Would you want your children using their technology the same way that you use yours? Where you use it, how you use it, what you use it for. We need to really wrestle with this. Okay, if I'm going to hold my children to a stricter standard than I'm even willing to do, how do I go about that? I can say, well, I'm an adult, I can make those decisions. Okay. Is that really an honest approach to this? Or is it just like, I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want them doing what I don't want them doing, and there's no purpose behind it at all? The reason why I say that is because I think that there are times if we were to say to our child, if we're talking to them, they have their device up and say, could you put that down while I'm talking to you? Some of our kids could, disrespectfully certainly, but back, you first. You first. Don't talk to me like that, boy. I know I shouldn't, but I still wanted to say it and I said it, right? How are we modeling this before our kids? In fact, when we look at the neurological development and how that is influenced by screen time, Whether it's the World Health Organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics, others, well, all of their research kind of agrees on three primary conclusions. One, almost no sedentary screen time for ages 0 to 2, and less than an hour throughout all of middle school, or throughout up until the school age. 2, whatever the limit is now, less is always best. 3, how the adults in the home use technology impacts how the kids perceive technology. Is this your best friend? Is your spouse and are your children competing with this dumb $1,000 piece of plastic and metal and other rare minerals that for some reason we keep finding around the world? Are they competing for your attention? Colin Karchner was a good friend to Protect Young Eyes. He had his own advocacy organization, and he sadly and very unexpectedly passed away in 2019 at the age of 40 years old. He says this: showing your kids you love them is 2% effort and 98% just putting down your phone. Now, you may disagree with the percentages, and I think that's fine. I think I disagree with the percentages. But the point of what he's trying to say here is it's a lot easier than we make it out to be, showing our kids we love them. In fact, the Word of God instructs us as fathers not to exasperate our children, but inversely to raise them up in the nurture and in the training and instruction of the Lord. That's our task, dads. That's our task. Doesn't mean moms aren't involved. My Big Fat Greek Wedding, there's a scene where Tula is wanting to go to college and get a degree, and dad is so against women getting a degree. And she's complaining to her mother, and mom is saying, no, don't worry, I have dad. It's like, well, dad is the head. He's like, yes, the husband is the head, but the woman is the neck, and she can turn the head wherever she pleases. I was like, it's so true. It's so true. But as fathers, we need to be about the discipline, the instruction, the nurturing, the spiritual development and growth of our children. We don't pass that off to, even you may have the greatest youth pastor in all the country. It is not his job to be the primary discipler of your children. That's yours. He can be a great asset. He can come alongside. He can be that other voice, but he can't replace you. At least he shouldn't. God gave your kids to you to do that. In fact, the USA Today article said this, that communication time bomb, parent smartphone use could be the new secondhand smoke. And in that it says this: regular quality interactions with parents, talking, listening, singing, reading, and playing together, fuel children's language development and acquisition of communication skills. It is hard nowadays to get a kid to look you in the eyes when you're talking to them. We're not used to that. We deflect, we look down, we kind of look up and then break contact because it's awkward. When Ryan was getting to job age, again, and he's now 22-year-old, I was like, buddy, I promise you, what I tell you now is going to get you a job someday. He's like, there's no way. I said, you're going to practice with me, with some of my business friends, other adults. I want you just to learn how to introduce yourself, to look someone in the eye, give them a good firm handshake, and tell them it's good to meet them. I was like, that will get you a job someday. He's like, Dad, that's so stupid. I was like, you're right. But it's true. And he'd gotten to the point where he was sitting around the house more than he needed to. He's like, dude, it's your time to leave for a little while and go have a job and be a big boy now. And so he goes and he interviews at a car wash that was hiring. And he goes in, he interviews, my name is Ryan. He looks him in the eye, gives him a good firm handshake, gets hired. First day on the job, the hiring manager comes out, hey, how's the first day going? Oh, doing great, sir. Yeah, good. Hey, I just want to let you know, I knew I was going to hire you on your handshake. That kid did not want to tell me that. Because it was like, is there like some secret code like only adults know? Like, how is it this simple? I'm like, I don't know, dude, but it is. I'm telling you. And so coming alongside. And some of these practical tips, I want to think of this modeling the right behavior. 1, post with permission. Our kids need to realize that they don't get to post whatever they want about whomever they want, whenever they want online. And that starts with us. I took a picture of Silas and I today while we were flying in, and I said, hey, do you mind if I post this on Facebook? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I said, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. And then later I was like, hey, there's 150 people who have already liked it. And there's a bunch of people who have commented on it. He's like, oh, really? Like, yeah. But we at least, it was something we talked about. And I say, hey, look, your brother-in-law and your brother and your mom and your grandma and like all the people that saw this and they liked it. All right, cool. But post with permission. The reason why I say this is because we are a group of people that have the privilege of our childhood photo albums being stuck in a box in a closet or an attic far, far away from the internet. Thank the Lord for that. You know, the bathtub photos that all of our moms always wanted to take. I'm glad that's not on the internet. All the awkward times when we're in that late elementary, early middle school where our teeth are as big as our forehead and like nothing matches and we're all just awkward. I'm glad that stage is not on the internet. But many times as parents, we don't even think twice about posting some of those things. And our kids are growing up with a digital footprint that they had no voice in curating. Next, some practical tips. How can you get your kids involved in your digital life? We call this co-play. Technology ought to be a we activity, not primarily a me activity. If these things are constantly dividing your family and you only isolate when you get on these things, then it is harming your family. Find ways to do it together. I have some 2-player games on my phone. I mean, like Battleship kinds of games, not anything high-tech. Battleship, those kinds of things that I play with my boys. I have Mario Kart on here, and we'll run races on Mario Kart. But something we're doing together, because I don't want, as somebody who has strong opinions, and you may have already learned that, as somebody who has strong opinion, I don't want my kids to walk away thinking that all technology is always awful all the time, every time. There is a way to have an appropriate relationship with the technology that is developed within our world. And I want to help them learn that. So whenever possible, do technology together. And then lastly, announce your intentions. There are times that when your kid is talking to you, that you do need to take a phone call or respond to an email or text message that just came up. And you say, you know what, buddy, I want to hear the rest of the story. Just hold on one second. I need to answer this really quick, and I promise I'll come right back to you. And then come right back to them. Because the easy thing is, especially if we have notifications on our device, we go to respond to one text message, and then we see that we had 3 or 4 text messages that we missed, and then we have an email, and then all of a sudden a sport update, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, I need to get that off of Amazon, and then it's like 3 days later, and you never went back to your kid to hear the rest of whatever story it was. So have that conversation. Let them know that you acknowledge their value and their worth and what they mean to you, but also acknowledge that there are varying priorities at times. And if there's a crisis going on, you ignore the phone. But if this is just like a silly story, then see if you can pause, answer this, and get back to it. Next, pursue authentic connection. So after modeling the right behavior, you want to pursue authentic connection. How well do you know the heart of your child? What makes them tick? Could you order for them at any fast food restaurant or any, do you know what their favorite movies are? Could you go Christmas shopping without asking or birthday shopping without asking? How well do you know your kids? Because we need to realize that we're not going to be able to outsmart them. They're always going to know more. There's always going to find ways around it. And parental controls alone aren't enough. I know that's really depressing to hear. But if we capture the heart of our kids, I promise you it's worth it. The struggles fade. That's to say the raging hormones don't take over common sense. I'm the firstborn of 6. 4 of my younger 5 siblings are sisters. I grew up with a lot of hormones in my house. I knew about menstrual cycles at an age younger than most men because I just knew that one of my sisters was dealing with some stuff and I didn't want to know anything else more about it, but there was a reason why this is going on and it wasn't this way last week. And that's all right. It won't be this way next week. I just got to endure and just use my own bathroom and not the one that they use with the trash and all the other things and just live my life, right? But we need to make certain that we have these kinds of things where we know the heart of our kids. There's a great statement that Dr. Kurt Thompson put out, and we want to put it here. We can grow up in homes in which the food finds the table, the money finds the college funds, and the family even finds the church each Sunday. But somehow, our hearts remain undiscovered by the two people we most need to know us, our parents. And there's this longing, I think, for kids to be known by their parents, to be cherished. And whether your parents were present or absent, there were times in your life, and maybe they're gone, they've passed away, and there are still times in your life which I wish I could talk to Dad about this. Oh, Mom would be so happy to hear this. We want to please our parents. I think that's innate as humans because we want to ultimately please our Heavenly Father as well. So, in homes where digital trust is high, we find that digital friction is low. If we can establish trust within the digital environments, the friction is going to be reduced. We want to build these bridges of trust. It's like, okay, well, Doug, how do I do that? All right, cool. Let's talk about this. One, you need to commit to yourself that you are going to stop freaking out. How many of you are the parents, you're the freak out parent? All right. Exactly. And again, it's not always the mama bears. Some of us dads, we are just right under the surface ready to explode, right? And that's all right. That's all right. But for some of us, can you imagine coming up with the courage to tell your parents that you saw porn and they blow a lid? They're not coming back to you about that ever again. Why? Because they want to please you. And they said this and it made you upset. And they're going to walk away thinking that you're upset with them. And if we're not careful and don't have open dialogue with our kids saying, you know what, I realize you feel as though that I'm really upset with you, but there are some things that I just wish that you never had to experience in life, and this is one of them. And I'm just more upset about just things in general than I am at you, and I'm sorry that you kind of believe that I was upset with you. Will you forgive me? I'm working on doing better with this. Many times, this kind of content finds our kids. Our kids aren't looking for it. And when they do, they don't know what they're looking for. They may have heard a word at school, they didn't know what it was, and so they asked Dr. Google, whose office is open 24/7. And so we need to make certain that we're creating this kind of environment where, and maybe what you need to do is to write out the 10 things you never want your child to tell you. Write that list down and then say them to yourself in the mirror until that you can hear those phrases without overreacting. But just find some ways that you can do this so that they know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, your son or daughter can always land softly with you. Now, this is hard. And this may start with forgiveness, confession, not from your kids to you, but you to your children. Saying, you know what, I've blown it. And I'm sorry, I want to do better. I need you to be patient with me. I'm going to try to be more patient with you. I'm not going to do it perfectly. You don't do it perfectly. And guess where you got that from? Me. Guess where I got it from? Grandma and Grandpa. Right? And they got it from, and we got to go all the way back to Adam and Eve. Right? So as we go through all this, we need to realize that our kids need to know that they can come and talk to us. Because not all children come to porn and content like that for the same reason adults do. In fact, we've written a blog post on this. So if you want to read this, go ahead. You can scan the QR code. And I have no problem with you taking pictures of anything while we're talking. All right, you can take pictures of anything. You're here, and that's awesome. And if there's a time where you need to check a sports score or check a text message, and you want to act like you're taking a picture of the screen, I'm cool with that. The only people that are going to know that you're not is Jesus and everybody sitting behind you. But I don't care. You're here, is it Wednesday today? You're here on sorry, when I travel a lot, I just don't even know what day it is anymore. You're here on a Wednesday night where you could be doing a lot of other things. And so I'm okay with allowing some of those other things to make themselves into this room. I'm just thankful you're here. But this is a blog post we've written on why kids look at pornography. And I find many times, this isn't necessarily all included in this blog post, but my own observation, I've found that many times our kids they are trying to answer these questions of identity and value, and they are looking to porn to help answer that. And like, that's a strange way to go. Sure. How many of you guys, middle school, high school, learned a few things in the locker room? Right? Or from your older brother or from your buddy's older brother. And that's just how it was. There's that locker room talk. But when you don't know what it is, you kind of play it off like you know what it is because you don't want to be that little kid that is innocent. And then you go home and to try to keep up with the guys, you go and you search this stuff and you get hooked. So you're trying to answer that identity piece. Who am I? What am I about? What's my status amongst the guys? I find many times our daughters just want to be loved and cherished. And the assumption is that all the guys are looking at porn. And so if I'm going to get and keep a boyfriend, I need to keep up with their expectations. And so my value to answer that big question of do I matter? Am I valuable to anyone? And primarily him? And so they're trying to answer these identity and value questions, and they think that porn is the answer. But as parents, it's our responsibility to help navigate that, to have those kinds of conversations so they know that it isn't. In fact, it's a really crummy substitute. So here's another fun question, classroom participation. What do you think is the right age to start having the conversation about pornography? With your kids. Yes? Okay, before school age. So you're talking 4 or 5 years old, somewhere in there, younger, whatever. Okay? Others. How many of you feel like 35 feels like a real good, like let's just start, I'm comfortable with that, right? Yeah. Okay? Okay? Wherever you're perceiving, their sexual activity and interest and engagement, to try to precursor to that, say, hey, I want to get ahead of this. Okay? Yes, sir. Okay? How many of you wait for your kids to learn about sex at school before you have that conversation with them? Do we leave that to the school to teach? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot there. But I'm just asking the question. Something that's such a gift that we have to give to another person, we abdicate that responsibility. How many of you had a sex talk of any kind with your parents growing up? How many of you that talk was more than once, or was it the talk? The talk, right? For me, I grew up in Michigan. We went to a Detroit Pistons basketball game. Okay? This is back in the bad boy era when actually basketball was played by men, and fouls were something that you only did when blood had to be mopped off the floor, right? This is back in basketball. And so we lived on the other side of the state, and we had a 2.5-hour drive to the Palace of Auburn Hills where the Pistons were playing then. And the tickets, my dad was a pastor, the tickets were in the office. So we drove up to the church. We pulled to the church parking lot, and we're getting there, and my dad says, Doug, what do you think about sex? I could not believe my dad just said that word. I'm 10 years old, I think. And then he goes into the office and leaves me in the car all to myself. And then I come to find out that my mom and dad did this. And that's all I remember. I don't remember the basketball game. I don't remember anything from that day except those 2 points. That's it. Now, obviously, you saw my family photos, so you know I figured it out. But if we are dependent upon one talk to be the talk for all time, and we either have that or we say they're going to learn about it in 5th grade or 6th grade, whenever they have their first health class, I want to say, how do we get back involved in this? Whatever age you pick, subtract 2. And have a goal to have at least 10 conversations with your kid about pornography before their 10th birthday. Now, we actually have a blog on our website called How to Talk to a 5-Year-Old About Pornography. I talk about pornography in every single one of my student talks, K through 12. I don't use the word until the youngest is 7th grade. There are ways to get around to the concept. Our kids need to know that there are pictures of naked people online. And when they see it, to give instruction, what do you do when that happens? There's going to be parts, you may be online and you're watching a video on YouTube or on something else, and all of a sudden somebody sends you a picture and it shows the parts that are it's supposed to be covered by your swimsuit, if that's the way you want to go about it. Whatever the case may be. But they need to know, and that's what we do in our K through 2, 3 through 5 talks is, if you see something that makes you feel uncomfortable or is maybe an inappropriate picture or something that just makes you feel funny inside, put it down and tell someone. If somebody you don't know tries to talk to you on the internet, put it down and tell someone. If someone ever asks you to keep a secret, put it down and tell someone. And then who are those someones? Like, what happens at home? Who do you talk to? Mom and dad? Yes. What happens at school? The teacher? Awesome. What happens at a friend's house? Their mom or dad? You guys, you could come up and have this conversation and lead the conversation for me. You're doing so good. Our kids want to know what's right to do. There's empowerment there. They know what to do. My son Silas, because again, Silas was traveling with me, and he's kind of a wanderer, and I keep up with him when we're at the airport, but he wants to see all the sights and sounds. But I told him, like, buddy, he was sitting at the table, and I needed to get in the line at Qdoba, and he was eating and playing, and I said, and it was like 25 feet away at Atlanta, again, the busiest airport in the world. And I said, hey, I'm going to go over there and be right there. If anybody comes and talks to you, just shout as loud as you can. If somebody asks or wants to take anything or wants to give you anything, just yell for me, all right? He's like, okay, all right, cool. So let's go. I was watching him, and he's just playing and doing stuff. He's just being a kid. We go to the restroom before getting onto the plane, and he comes up to me as we're walking. I goes, Dad, I just want to let you know, a guy gave me some paper towel to dry my hands. It's like, okay. And in my heart, I'm like, thank you for not shouting. But it was that he knew what to do. And this is the not rule follower kid. But he knew what to do, and he felt as though I needed to tell Dad. So, you want to read about this? We have a blog post on it. If you want to read any of the stuff, if this is a topic that you find interest in because of maybe a lack of understanding, and you want to learn more about how to have this porn kind of conversation, we're not going to talk about porn this entire time. It may feel like that. That's not what we're going to talk about this entire time. But if you, on our website, if you feel digitally savvy enough, on our website we have a search bar. In that search bar on our website, and that search bar only on our website at protectyoungeyes.com, search bar website. Search the word pornography, and you'll read all the stuff we've written on it. You do it in the Google search bar at the top, that's your fault. That Crawford guy told me to search porn, and like, no, I did not. I told you on protectyoungeyes.com. If you don't think you can handle it, don't. Okay? Just don't. It's great information. You'll make it without it. All right? But we want to be able to have this thing. Okay, this ought to be something that we don't shy around. This is Chris. He's our founder and CEO, good friend of mine. Was a middle school pastor. Before that, a CPA with Ernst & Young. Worked for Covenant Eyes for a little while and then started Protect Young Eyes. We just want to be a resource. So if that all feels awkward, here's some really tangible examples of what this could look like.
Protect Young Eyes, one of the things that we say is 10 before 10. I want 10 porn talks before a kid turns 10. Now, sometimes parents freeze or freak when they hear this, but you'd be surprised what qualifies for a porn talk. Friends, I want drips through their lives. I don't want a PowerPoint with research. I don't want you to drown them with a porn talk. I want it during car time, meal time, together time, or bedtime, car time. You're going down the road. Honey, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable, naked people on the internet, that's called pornography. You can tell me. I'm safe. That's a porn talk. You could be in the kitchen stirring food. They don't even have to be looking at you. Guys, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable, that little funny feeling in your belly, if you ever see it, you'll never freak me out. You'll never be in trouble by telling me. Friends, that's a porn talk. You're tucking them in at night. Just say, honey, have you ever seen anything uncomfortable? Something that bothers you on a screen, a Chromebook, a tablet, even while doing homework. Listen for their response. That's a porn talk. Friends, if they're not rolling their eyes, you're not doing it enough. 10 before 10. That's a porn talk.
All right? So it doesn't have to be really awkward. Again, we're not getting charts out. We're not sitting down, son, we're talking about pornography. Right? It doesn't have to be that. It can, but it doesn't have to be. All right? And that's just an example. You'll see another video or two like that in the presentation. That's an example of the kind of stuff that we put out on our Instagram and other social media platforms. So if you're not following us, please do. Just search Protect Young Eyes on any major platform and we're there. So these practical tips. 1, be curious, not condemning. Ask questions of your kids like, hey, has this ever happened? Have you ever been, because again, if there's a chat feature, there is going to be predatory activity. It doesn't matter what it is. Roblox, yes. YouVersion Bible app, yes. Doesn't matter what platform you're on. If there's a way to chat, there's going to be predatory activity. So you need to be mindful of that. So be curious. Hey, when you're playing Minecraft, has anybody ever that you didn't know tried to talk to you? Oh, they have. Okay, well, how did you handle it? What did they say? What do they want to talk about? How did you handle that? Ask those questions. Be curious. And then if what they did isn't consistent with what you'd like to do in the future, say, hey, I'm sorry for not talking to you about this before this happened. That's on me. But moving forward, this is how I want you to handle that when that happens. And give them instruction. Again, we can't bring the hammer that first time. If we haven't told them what to do and they go against what we would want them to do, that's on us for not preparing them. That's not on them for doing what they've done. So we need to look at ourselves in that regard. 2, practice, practice, practice. One of the things that I do with JD and Silas is I'll go to them and say, hey, I want to show you something. And I'll have my phone ready to go. And their response is supposed to be, without looking at it, what do you want to show me? And then I'm required to describe verbally what I want to show them. In fact, it's so much of a game for them. They're like, Dad, you haven't asked us, what do you want to show me in a while? Like, well, because you keep bringing it up. Like, I want the element of surprise, right? But he says, hey, dude, I want to show you something. And they're like, what do you want to show me? And the reason for that is because I want to prepare them for when their buddies want to show them something that they would not want to verbally have to describe. I know, and part of it is that quick, and it's that muscle reaction of like, okay, the phone in my face, I'm going to look away. That only happens through training and practicing. And they're not going to do it perfectly. That's all right. And so in those cases, it becomes, all right, you can not always control the first look, but you can control the second. Our sons and daughters need to have bouncing eyes, is how I like to say it. You see that? Okay, saw it, and look away. Even though that internal, like, I want to see that again, is boiling up, it's like, no. And then 3, Google me. Your kids need to know they can ask you any question. When Cheyenne was 14, she moved into our home when she was 12. Ryan was 9 when they joined our family. All right? She's 13, 14. She's been in our house for a little while. I'm sitting on the couch on my laptop working, and she goes, hey, Daddy. I was like, what's up? She goes, what's erectile dysfunction? I'm like, all right. I assume she'd seen like a Viagra or a Cialis commercial because they're everywhere. And I was like, you really want to know? She's like, yeah, it's okay. Well, sweetheart, do you know what dysfunction means? Start with the easier of the 2 terms. Do you know what dysfunction means? And she's like, I was like, something doesn't function. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Yeah, that makes sense. I said, sweetheart, do you know what an erection is? And she looks at me while shaking her head with kind of a smirk like, I'm pretty certain that I do, but I don't want to say it right now. I was like, well, honey, when a man's penis, she goes, hold on a second. She ran out of the room. And only to return 45 seconds later with a teddy bear, sits on the couch next to me, puts the teddy bear in her lap, plugs the teddy bear's ears, and says, okay, go ahead. It's beautiful. But she knows that she can ask me anything. And she's carried that into adulthood. Like they're about to close on their first house, which is the coolest thing. But there are times when she was going through her first pregnancy, if she couldn't get a hold of my wife, she would call me. I'm like, honey, I am so honored that you would think that I know anything about this topic. My mom was pregnant most of my childhood. Again, there's 6 of us born in 12 years, and so I was a senior and my brother was a kindergartner. So yes, and my wife had been pregnant. Like, I've observed pregnant women. Never been one, not gonna be one. So I'll give you my answer. And as soon as you get a hold of Mom, ask her again, and whatever she says, if it's different from me, she's right, and just forget everything that I've said. She calls about wanting to know about recipes, all these things. I love that my grown children still think that Dad knows something. There was a season where, especially Ryan, thought I knew nothing. And many of you are in that stage right now. You are an idiot. Just ask your teenage kid, right? The fun thing was I was the youth pastor to a lot of my son's buddies, and they all thought I was brilliant, except for my son. They would come to me with questions, and my son was like, nah. Which is why I'm so glad he had a small group leader that he could go to that was outside of me, which was great. He needed that. Our kids need voices outside of us, but our voice needs to be in the middle of all of that as well. Next, delay all addictive tech. We've been doing this for a while, and no parent has ever come to me and said, you know what, we really blew it. We waited too long to give our kids Snapchat. And I'll never forgive myself. So we need to be mindful of this. Again, we're training up in the instruction of the Lord. So, the brain develops from back to front. So, we have the reptilian region of the brain. Now, it's not like there's firewalls between all these sections and they don't interact. This is a cohesive whole. But the reptilian brain is that regulatory part that when you get excited, your heart races. Like there's just things that are innate about you that you can't control. None of us have thought heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat while you've been sitting here. But judging on your all appearance, it has. And so all of those things are going on. But they're asking that MI7, that fight or flight kind of when you feel like, oh no, that's that part of the brain. Then we have the limbic system, and that's the emotions and a lot of these other different pieces, the arousal, the sexual longing, all of that stuff of wanting to have the question answered, am I loved? And then the last part of the brain to develop, which acts as the brakes of the brain. This is why you have asked your children multiple times, and your parents asked you multiple times, what were you thinking? Well, Dad, it made a ton of sense at first. How? Well, yeah, you're right. I know, but I'm trying to get an understanding because it's all go and no slow. It's like there's no brakes. It's like, do it. And so that complex thinking part, again, this is the part that doesn't develop until you're 25, 26 years old. Think of how many big decisions you made before your 26th birthday. Right? You probably graduated from high school, either went to the military, got a job, or went to college, met and probably married your spouse, and maybe even had a child or two, and your brain isn't even fully online yet. And we think that our 13-year-old is ready for a device that is over 100 times more powerful than the computer that put the first man on the moon. So as we think through these things, we need to realize that delay is the way. This isn't a no-tech strategy. This is a slow-tech strategy. There's no long-term risk. I know it seems odd to have double negatives, and so hear it out. There's no long-term risk in not exposing our children to interactive media. There's nothing that is proving that if you delay, then it's going to be harmful for your child. There's no study showing that. In fact, the study is showing more and more that it actually is more harmful. The iPhone turned 16 last year, came out in 2007. So we now have enough data that where we can look and see about the engagement with smart technology into where we are today. When I speak to K through 12 students, none of them either existed or have memory of a world without the iPhone. That's our computer or our automobile. Like it is just a normal part of their experience. Everybody has them. They're just there. And I think at times a little empathy for our kids. I mean, I am so glad that I did not grow up in this era. And I'm sure every generation has said that about the generation after them or two after them. Because under the guise of progress, we have left our first love. As the Apostle John says to the churches in Revelation. So again, this is why we kind of hold these, we look at all of this and we say, okay, now, Doug, it's what you're saying makes a little bit more sense here, why you would draw the line in this way. If the brain isn't fully developed before you're 26, all right, it seems to make some sense. So what do? 1, some practical tips when it comes to delay all addictive tech. Here's a fun one from Chris. Interrupt your kid.
I love interrupting my kids. How rude, right? But when it comes to their technology, I love to interrupt them. I want to do that so I can check whether or not they're hooked on their stuff. And they've known for a very long time that whenever Dad asks you to put something down, that's when you do it. And they know the reward from that is that most of the time when they want to play something, video game, whatever it is, most of the time the answer is yes. If they've proven that they're not hooked on it. That looks like this. A few weeks back, Blake was right in the middle of a Super Smash Brothers game, which is like a 3-minute match on the Switch. I was in the kitchen. I said, Blake, dude, I need you to pause the game, and I need you to come and help me empty the dishwasher. And you know what he did? He paused it, and he put it down. And I said, Blake, good job. That's exactly what I was hoping you would do. Now, as a reward, you don't need to help me. I'm going to do it. And he was like, awesome. Go ahead and keep playing. Because through training, he knows that if he listens to when Dad needs him to put it down, whether it's to help or just because I think they've had too much time, if they listen to that, then they know that most of the time when they want to play something, the answer to that question is yes. Because they've proven to me that the game doesn't control them. And they also know the consequence from that. If they get mad when I take it away, whatever they're playing is gone for at least a day. I want my sons to figure out how to manage themselves and their neurological responses when it comes to screens. Interrupt your kids.
Next. Even if you've said no, you need to teach them as though you've said yes. I think as parents, we think that we can control every environment that our kids engage in. We'd be wrong to make that assumption. If your child rides a school bus to or from school, you have forfeited control to the lowest common denominator of whatever device is on that 1 to however many kids on the bus ratio of adult to children. So even though you may have things tight down at home, you still need to talk to your kids as though they have access to everything, because when they're not around you, they have access to everything. Next, diligently prevent harm. Out of the box, most digital devices are expletive. We have to hunt for protection. Now, it shouldn't be that way, and that's part of what we're doing on a federal and state level of trying to pass legislation that makes it this way. But everything should be safe by default, right? So as we work through this, there's this foundation of bathing our kids in prayer and giving them a foundation upon the Word of God, of prayer in this layer of protection. But then there's also some really strong practical solutions. One is to make certain that we are teaching our kids to, above all things, to guard their hearts. Because from it flows all the issues of life, the Word of God says. So as we look at this, we want to make certain that after the rootedness, the foundation of the Word of God and a right understanding of who He is and who He's made us to be, we then have this next layer of this interpersonal relationship with our kids. Which is why you notice, like, model the right behaviors and pursue authentic connection. That's that foundational piece. Most of what we've talked about has been relational. We're going to get to the practical here, but we need to make certain that we're building the foundation of the relational, because if we don't do that, then when we try to set the standards on the technical and the practical, our kids aren't going to want to listen because they don't believe that we care about them at all. So then we get into Wi-Fi. Your router is probably the most used and also most underappreciated device in your home. Nobody notices it until it's down. Right? Nobody. You don't even think about it. Do you even know where your router even is at your house right now? And so when we look at these things and think about this, we need to make certain that if we don't understand it and we want to get these settings set up, bring your kid alongside. Let this be a co-play kind of thing. Hey, you're going to show me how to set up these protections on our device. And then the last thing they're going to show you is how to change the password. So then you can do that so they can't just log in and undo all the stuff that they just did because you still don't fully understand it, right? It's like, I'm going to invite you in, leverage your skills, but also remind you that this is not your world to rule. So if you don't understand your router, we've written the ultimate guide to understanding routers. And again, this is a blog post that I would highly recommend that you spend time looking at. And in it, we have links to a variety of the manufacturers. A lot of you, your router is the one that you get from your internet service provider. That's what most of us have. Even those have parental controls and settings that you can set. Now, there's to varying degrees, but even those have some sort of controls on them. And we have links to the top manufacturers for those things for you to look at what their parental controls are. Again, Chris was a CPA with Ernst & Young for a while, and so this is the blog post. If spreadsheets are your love language like they are Chris's, you're going to love this one. You're going to love it, all right? Because we take all of their features and stuff and say which ones do well, which ones are lacking, and then we give some recommendations of who we believe makes the best router. And to let the cat out of the bag, we believe Griffin is producing the best router on the market right now. You can manage every device on your network from your phone. You can implement parental controls. Monitor network security, keep an eye on your kids' internet activity no matter where you are. I have a Griffin router in my house. Everything seems to be connected to the internet nowadays, right? And so my charcoal grill has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on it. Now I like this because it's also a smoker, and I live 15 minutes from the beach like many of you do here, and there's times when I don't want to be sitting around for a 16-hour brisket or pork shoulder, so I want to go to the beach. So I can look at the internal temp of my brisket from the beach. It's like, reached the stall. All right, I'm going to start packing up and head over, right? The last time I turned on my grill, I got a notification on the Griffin app, a new device is connected to your internet. And I was like, oh yeah, that's my grill. All right, that's fine. But anything like that, having that access to those things. Now, they have a variety of different features and a variety of different, like the Guardian, the cheapest one, has the smallest range. It's about, if you have a house that's under 1,200 square feet, you can probably get away with one of them. Or maybe you like to have zones and have multiple ones. You can do that. The AX is mesh technology. The tower is the one that I actually have at my house right now. And so there's ways to be able to look at this. If you want to read about that, you can do that on our website. I'm not here to sell you on Griffin. Now, we sell more Griffin routers, I think, anybody in the country. But that's just because we think that they're the best and people listen to us. And if someone else makes a better one, guess what? We'll promote them. Like, this isn't about getting money back to us. This is about, we want to serve families, and we found something, and they're really good at what they do. Next, the device. When I talk about making certain that, we're talking about no smartphones before high school, and you're like, well, what if I want to get a hold of my kids? What if, they get home from school before we do? We don't have a home phone anymore. Whatever the case may be, there's reasonable reasons for having a cell phone at your home or having your kids have access to something. So the two best manufacturers that we have found is Gab Wireless and Bark. Now, Gab Wireless, they have a smartphone and a smartwatch. Now, their smartphone doesn't have internet. It doesn't have access to any app store except their own proprietary app store where you can get like an FM radio app and an alarm clock app. And when you can message, but you can have it set so they can't even send or receive pictures. There's all these different things that you can do. And so it gives them, and I would say the watch, the smart watch, if you're like, maybe your third grader is now being trusted to stay at home, the watch is a great option. It lets you know where they are. They can make calls, respond to pre-uploaded texts and those kinds of things. But there's a way to be able to have that access. And then maybe they get to middle school and they are entrusted with something that has a full screen on it. And it looks like everything else, but it doesn't have access to everything else. And then maybe when you get to the point where, okay, now they're in high school, they have their car, maybe it's now time to have social media. Bark makes the best phone out there when it comes to monitoring and filtering and all those kinds of things, primarily and especially with social media. Now, Bark also has a app and a software side of things that you can have Bark monitor your iPhone. They built their phone off of the Android platform because of the way the coding and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get nerdy in this, but basically, Android, Google allows open source coding. So if you don't want somebody to monitor and filter or have any control over your app, you design it that way. They're not going to get in the way of that. And so on Android devices, you can get more content in real time than with Apple devices. Apple, in very strong ways, is more about security and privacy. And that actually, there's strengths to that, but there's also makes it more difficult to get some of that content from third-party platforms like Bark. Bark gets the best out of Apple, but they're still going to be limited. They found some ways to get around with iCloud and updates and all those kinds of things to get better access, but just want to let you know that. So if you want to learn about them, again, QR code for that, you can learn about those. You also have QR codes in your note-taking guides on there. But whatever the case may be, just find a software that works. We have Covenant Eyes, which is a great kind of accountability platform. The Hourglass is Screen Time, which is the parental controls on any Apple device. The Kite is Family Link, which is the parental controls on any Android device. So think Chromebooks or your Kindles or those kinds of things, or your Android cell phones. They use Family Link. Again, Bark as a software option. Just find something that works, but at a bare minimum, at least get your device right. In fact, if you don't know how to do it, go to our website. We have how to set up parental controls on any smart device. Now, we don't have Samsung smart refrigerator in there or some of those other things. But when it comes to those things that your kids are actually going to be on, now some kids have tried to find porn through the refrigerator. But to have those things, to work through that, to have, and this is like screenshot, arrow, swipe here, tap here, go to your child's device, do this. Like the assumption is you've never seen one of these things before, and we want to guide you through that. The sad thing is the iPhone, it's 36 steps to get it set up the right way, which we think is atrocious, and that's also what we're going toward them through legislative means. Next, the environment, the location. Where your kids use technology has a major impact on how they use technology. The 5 most dangerous places for kids to be online: bedroom, bathroom, sleepovers, school buses, grandparents' house. If you want to read the blog post on that, we've written that for you as well. And I want you to think of your child's smartphone as a webcam, just for a moment. Would you put a webcam that the world has access to in your child's bedroom? How about their restroom? Yet when they bring in their internet-connected camera device, that's exactly what you're allowing. So our kids couldn't bring cell phones into bedrooms and bathrooms. And when Ryan, what he would do is, there was one time I came downstairs, his bedroom was in the basement. He was laying across, this is the threshold of his bedroom, okay? Bedroom, living room. He's on his device like this, technically obeying the rules, right? And like for me to you away, it's a really comfortable couch. And like, why are you laying on a cement floor with a little bit of padded carpet on your stomach right here when you could be right there, right? But he wanted to feel like it was in. It made me laugh so hard. I was like, what in the world? But whether you're 4, 14, or 40, one-on-one against the internet, eventually we all lose. And this isn't, again, we've talked about porn. This isn't only porn. How many of you wake up in the morning thinking, did I really buy that on Amazon last night? I did. And it's showing up in 3 hours, right? Or you're really cranky the next day at work and at home because you stayed up till 1:30 to watch a West Coast sports event. And you couldn't just put your device down and go to bed like a big boy. I struggle on this one. When we combine bedroom darkness and boredom, it's a high-risk environment. Lastly, the app. Here's some apps. Top left, we have Among Us. Then we have TikTok. We have Snapchat. We have Discord in the bottom right corner. We have YouTube. We have Instagram. I'm going to let you guys figure out what the next two are. What's the planet-looking one? What planet does it look like? Their marketing department scored on that one. It's called Saturn. Saturn was a platform for exchanging class schedules. So remember when we were in school, we got it printed out, and we actually had to go to the person and say, hey, who do you have third hour? This is just an app that has that. The problem is that it allowed for students to be able to link their Snapchat accounts with it. And so in its first iteration, and we wrote a blog post about it, and then they changed it and asked us to update our blog because of the impact it had on their startup. But people on the outside of the school were able to get class lists. And if they had their Snapchat attached to it, then they could then go through Snapchat to get access to these kids. And then the other one, the bottom left, what do you think that one's called? Just read it. Be real. This was supposed to be the anti-Instagram platform. You get a notification, you have 2 minutes to post something. So it gets you in real life. Right? Not this doctored up, beautiful, all these filters, Instagram junk. We want the real. But what I ended up doing is now, especially our daughters, felt as though they always had to be on because they never knew when the Be Real notification was going to come, and they may be caught ugly and unprepared. You want to learn about parental controls on apps, what they are, if they have them? We have over 100 of them on our website available for you to read at your leisure for free whenever you want. And again, to give you an example of what Instagram looks like, these aren't just little reviews. We want to make certain that you're fully aware of what is going on these platforms. Another big deal that's going on right now is deepfakes and AI. Because of time, I'm not going to spend a lot of this on there, but 15 steps that you can take to help decrease the risk. Please read our blog post. These are very, very famous people who have already had deepfakes about them, and this is the most innocent of them. You ever wonder what that girl looked like naked? You don't have to worry anymore. You have AI take her face and put it on something and make it look like that, and then you can post it and share it around the school. So if you want to read the blog post on AI, we just updated this last week, 2 weeks ago. Chris and another guy in our office, Isaac, co-authored this, and I would highly recommend. This is what we have found to be the best resource on the topic. There are other great ones out there. We feel as though that we've put in a lot of work to be able to put a very helpful, geared toward parents approach to this. One of the things that we practice in our home is the 7-day rule. And what this is before your kid can download an app on their device, you download it on your device, create an account that's similar to your child's demographic, and mess around with it for 7 days. You may find that you can't create an account for your 8-year-old daughter because she has to be 13. And you're like, sorry, sweetheart, you can't have it. All my friends do. Well, you have my permission to go to all of your friends' parents and tell them that you have to be at least 13 to have this app. Then you all can be miserable together. But just say that's all right. I'm not going to let you lie about yourself to get what you want online. That's just not how we're going to approach the internet. But have that. And like, well, Doug, you can do that? Absolutely. You can set up on both Apple and Android platforms that you can turn off the app stores. They have no access to download or delete apps without putting in a code. You can make it so they can download but not delete. And that's kind of the progression that we did with Cheyenne and Ryan. They couldn't download or delete anything. Then they could download without delete. So they weren't downloading something at school and then deleting it before they got home, hoping that I didn't catch it. And then as they proved themselves to be trustworthy, having conversations, as they had less restrictions and more permissions, then I had more personal engagement. So the 7-day rule, download the app, create a test account, see if it's something you want your kid having. That's all right. They can wait. I'm not going to show this video, but you can see it on our Instagram. But again, parent-led device ownership. Just seeing things as being co-owned. And the reason why we're not doing that is just because of time. Last thing, advocating for change. Our policies as a country and as a state are antiquated. We're not far from D.C. here. Chris has been in D.C. multiple times, even this year, sitting in boardrooms with executives of Apple and Snapchat and Google and Be Real and Saturn and Harvard law professors and just all of these things that we're trying to come together and say, what can we do? So due to the meteoric rise of smart technology, we need to be involved. So how can you do that? One, we need to be reminded that our children are a heritage from the Lord. And that drives our advocacy, that we want to create this next generation to carry the torch farther than we ever dreamed possible. But sadly, some of them aren't even getting to that point because they're making decisions that are not only detrimental to their future, but sadly, many are choosing and accidentally even ending their lives through these things. And that I don't have to go far outside of where I'm standing right now for stories like that. So if you want to get involved, you want to talk with your schools on finding out what some of their policies are for cell phones in the classroom, a variety of different things. We have resources out there that you can download and you can submit and give to your school administrators or whatever the case may be, and say, hey, we're trying to create a safer digital environment for our kids. Have you considered some of these policies that other public school systems and private school systems are doing around the country? Some states, even we just helped Georgia get some policies over the hump. Florida has a no cell phone policy in their public schools. In fact, it's posted in the schools. If we see it, we take it. Yikes. Is that better? Is that worse? I don't know, but are your schools engaging in that, and how are they answering that? Because sadly, the number of reports of CSAM, which is child sexual assault material, is not going down year over year. Look at 2019, 16.9 million reports. In 2022, which is the last numbers that we have. NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they're the organization that when you report CSAM, it goes to them. In 2022, there's 32 million reports, and out of those 32 million reports was 90 million images and videos of sexually explicit content of children. And you see a huge jump during COVID because our kids were isolated from one another and they're trying to figure out what to do in the midst of isolation. This is Chris sitting in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C. in July of 2019, the first time that he went to Washington, D.C. We had unanimous bipartisan support on some of the stuff that we were working on. It kind of got pushed to the side with change of presidency and COVID kind of took over, but the momentum is back and there's some things that we're really excited about that may be happening here. Again, we're getting into another election and that always seems to redirect what momentum they have in policies, but that's how our government works every 4 years. We've helped the state of Utah, a variety of other different places put together bills to do this, and we aren't going to stop. We want you to be prepared, we want you to be balanced, and we want your families to be protected. So, what are some practical tips for advocating for change? If you go to www.usa.gov/elected officials, you can see who all of your elected officials are in your state or region, and you can reach out to them, have access to them. I'd also encourage you to find a way to create a community here of like-minded parents, saying, you know what, we may not agree on all of the ways that we dot our I's and cross our T's, but we do want to take seriously our commitment to our kids' digital and online lives. And lastly, as we get into this, we've created a platform that's called The Table. So here's 3 things I want you to do. One, I want you to this week get your router right. Go to that ultimate guide for routers, get your router right. That means you're getting a different one, fine. If it's just setting up stuff on your on your router itself, fine. Just do something, all right? That's gonna be better than it was yesterday. 2, start creating a safe place in your home that your kids know that they can always Google you, they can always land softly with you. I promise you, you won't regret it. Some of you don't have grown children out of the house yet. Some of you do. Those that do, not all of your kids are close to you. Some of you, you are close with your kids, your adult kids. And you're like, I don't know how we did it, but we're so blessed to be able to have this. It starts with those relationships now. It really does. Train up a child in a way they should go so when they're old, they won't depart from it. Then this last platform we've created is The Table. What we have found is we like to say things that are honest about online platforms on those online platforms, and we get put in timeout from time to time. In fact, our Instagram account was put in timeout for a little while this last year, And we have over 100,000 followers, and they don't like that. And so we created this online community called The Table. And it's a resource for you. We actually just hired somebody on staff this last month to moderate that, to engage with people, to answer questions and those kinds of things. There is a free 7-day trial. Then there also is a subscription side to it. And if you use this QR code when registering, you get it for more than half off if you are at all interested. I'm not a sales guy. I just want to point you to something, and we've worked really hard to create this. You want to go the free route? Don't blame me at all, but take the 7-day free trial at least. Watch all of our webinars that we have. Download all of our documents. Get as much free as you can in 7 days, please, and then cancel it. I don't care, all right? Yeah, I can, absolutely. But I want this to be a resource for you, all right? Again, Abby is awesome. Abby's been a follower of ours for 6 years on social media, and we just hired her to be our moderator. She's awesome. She's in Cincinnati, husband, 2 kids, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and is just doing awesome stuff and wants to be the advocate for you. Lastly, again, it's ironic to end a conversation like this saying, hey, guess what? We're also on social media. But the reason why we are is because you are. And we want to be a resource to you. So follow us. If you're on Instagram, follow us there. If you don't have Instagram, don't get it to follow us. Just go to our website and get a lot of information there. You don't need Instagram just to get our content, okay? I promise you, you don't. Just have your friend follow us and just ask what we're putting on from time to time. Facebook, YouTube. In fact, we did our guy Isaac just started putting us on TikTok because more adults are on TikTok. And we're trying to increase kind of our influence there. I hate TikTok more than anything. But it has actually the best parental controls out of any of the platforms out there. So there's that. But it's also the most addictive platform out there as well. So this last benediction, Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 to 21. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for letting me serve you this evening. I'll stay around and answer as many questions as you want. We got to get our kids. That's part of this. But I like to be the second to last person out the door, only followed by the person locking the door and turning off the lights. So let me answer any questions you have. It's been a pleasure to serve you. Thank you. God bless.